In the previous video, we have looked at the user details interface, and we understand user details is a contract or schema or blueprint, whatever we call, maintained by the Spring Security Framework to represent an actual user who is trying to access our application. We also saw if there is a scenario where you are good to go with the default implementation provided by the Spring framework itself, then go ahead and use the user class which implements this user details interface and have all the implementation of these abstract methods. Now in this video, let's try to see the other second important interface inside the Spring Security user management, that is user details service. So this user details service have a single abstract method which is load user by username. So let's go and see the code inside the framework, what is there under this interface. If you see, now we are inside the interface user details service which is present inside the Spring Security library with the package org.springframework.security.core.userdetails. And as we discussed in theory, it has only one abstract method which is load user by username, and the return type of that is our user details interface type. So this is the interface where we have to implement and provide our own concrete code inside this load user by username to indicate Spring Security how I want to bring my user details using a username. You may ask, like, why can't we query directly with username, password and authorities into the database directly? But that's a very bad practice, because we should always query with only username so that we don't have to send the password details to the repository layer, which will eventually go to the database servers. So there might be scenarios where DBAs can check the query logs and see what queries has been running on the server. So to avoid such scenarios, we only pass username to this method, and this will try to have a logic of pulling the user details based upon username either from a database or from a memory location or from an LDAP server. So once we have those user details available, Spring Security can decide by having the password that it is received from the database and what it is receiving from UI. So by comparing using password encoder, which we'll be discussing in the future videos, it will decide whether the logged in user is a valid user or not. And at the same time, you can see DAO authentication provider will call this interface. If you can recollect our Spring Security internal architecture, we said there is a provider which will give responsibility of finding and validating the user to both user detail service and password encoder. Obviously, this user detail service interface again leverages user details schema to validate the user along with the password encoder. Similarly, the same thing is happening here, where our authentication provider will leverage these user details to call load user by username wherever it has been implemented, which will return user details. So with this, we understand that user detail service is an way of representing to the Spring Security on how I should fetch my user details based upon username. So this will be very apt in the scenarios where you always want to fetch the details from the user, but you never have a scenario of creating, updating, deleting and changing the passwords. So for all such scenarios, we should go and implement user details manager, which we are going to discuss in the next section. Thank you. Bye.